Hello, friends, and welcome. Today we are here to fully wrap season one of Angel. So, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what my thoughts were about this season, about how I thought they handled the connections with Buffy, like the crossovers and the separation of the two shows. I'm going to answer a few questions, talk about favorite episodes, all that stuff. So, if you're interested in that, then you're in the right place. If you're not, then please wait because 501 shall be coming to YouTube next week, if I'm not mistaken. And if everything goes according to schedule, it should come right after this one. So yes, welcome. I'm excited to talk about Angel, but before I do want to give a disclaimer. This is very important. If you have not seen the later seasons of Angel, I have seen seasons 3, 4, and 5. So I will possibly be talking about some spoilers, some character arcs, like some things that I shouldn't know, but I do. So I just want to give a warning. If you stumbled across this video and you're not familiar with Angel in its entirety, this is not the video for you. So please click away. I don't think the conversation is going to be too spoilery because something that I have discovered by watching Angel is that I know so much less than I expected I would know. So, I think we're going to be fine, but I would rather err on the side of precaution. So, yeah. Okay, well, let's start discussing. I do think that Angel season 1 was very interesting and it was very different than Buffy season 1, I would say, because I think that it had more ups and downs than Buffy season 1, because I do think that while Buffy season 1, the beginning was a little bit weaker, it definitely, like, the second half of the season really sort of picked up maybe after like the Angel episode. I think it really picked up and there wasn't like it never really sort of went down. It just kept going sort of uphill until like reaching Prophecy Girl, which was like it. And I have to say that I think Angel sort of had its ups and downs because while they did, I guess, like start off slow in a similar way than Buffy, I do think that there came a point in the middle of the season where I definitely think it sort of went downhill a little. But that was like a very personal thing though. The She episode is still haunting me a little because I feel like I didn't love that episode so much and I feel a similar way about like The Ring. And I guess like I've Got You Under My Skin. That episode I don't feel the need to criticize as much because even though it was horror, which is not my genre, and I was suffering, I don't think it was a bad episode. I think they did it in a really interesting way. It's just not my cup of tea, but I will admit that it was very interesting. Like to see them pull from like different genres because I feel like Angel has been doing that a lot. They had this entire episode that was just horror, and I think 104, the I've Got You in Pieces, something like that as the title, right? I think that episode also did a similar thing in regards to like pulling from the horror genre, and I do think that their vibe is completely different than Buffy's. So while I do think that they had a little bit more like of that up and down, I do think that they were able to reach the highs a lot more than Buffy, if that makes sense. Maybe Buffy didn't feel the ups and downs as much because they weren't able to reach that like ultimate high, I would say, until Prophecy Girl. I feel like Prophecy Girl is the exception to anything Buffy season 1 because it is like so ahead of its time and it's like the perfect season finale. Not that season 1 isn't a great season, but I feel like it needs to be acknowledged that like it is like a world building season. It is the season where we're like getting to know the characters, and so I feel like you don't have that same emotional attachment that can bring you to a feeling that they made you feel in Prophecy Girl. I mean, they were able to do it in Prophecy Girl, but I feel like not so much before. And in regards to Angel, I think this is the really big advantage that they had in regards to using characters that we already know and pulling on those feelings that are very familiar. They didn't really need to establish that so much because, 8 episodes into the show, they were able to give me the most outstanding episode of television I have ever seen. Like, I Will Remember You was truly a masterpiece. I have not gotten over it. Like, I will never get over that episode. I could do an entire video just talking about how much I love I Will Remember You. Well, I guess that is my I Will Remember You reaction, but like, you know what I mean. I think that was just such like I don't think Buffy could have reached that because we didn't have that same emotional attachment to the characters. So I do think that thankfully, by the way that the characters transferred and you sort of already had that relationship with Buffy and Angel established, I think the ups in Angel were so up. You know, the whole Faith storyline, it really hits you hard. And maybe it would have hit hard even if we weren't super familiar with Faith, but I do think that the entire context of season 3 is so important to actually having 5 by 5 and Sanctuary really hit you the way that these writers wanted to hit you. So I do think that like the top episodes of Angel were like really, really high on my list of like amazing episodes, and not just of Angel, but of the entire Buffyverse. You know, like I Will Remember You is my number one right now, considering both Buffy and Angel. And I feel like Sanctuary must be up there too. So I just mean that like that I think they did a really good job with. And also I feel like it was very different from Buffy season 1 because they only had 12 episodes. So they were clearly like they had less time to establish things, whereas Angel, they had 22 plus all of the context of the previous 3 seasons of Buffy. So they had like a lot more to work with, which gave them the ability to make a more, I would say, like emotional season. Not just with what they did in I Will Remember You, but what they did with Doyle, what they did with Faith. I also want to say like what they did to Kate and her father's storyline. They really pulled some emotional strings there. And even the Lindsay backstory. I think it was a very like emotionally heavy season of just getting to know these people. While I do think that Buffy season 1, and I don't know if this is a little bit biased because I feel like I am more familiar with Buffy than I am with Angel, which feels so funny to say because I guess I have seen more of Angel than I have of Buffy if you really think about it and do the math. I think but still it just I feel a lot more familiar with Buffy because I never really processed the parts of Angel that I did watch. And so I do think that like the characters that they set up in Buffy season 1, I feel like those relationships were a little bit better set up than the ones in Angel. But I do think that they're doing a great job and they're getting there. But I do think that the Doyle thing was a little bit of a setback to me just because I know you guys told me and stuff that unfortunately it had to do with the actor having problems and having to leave the show, and it's a really unfortunate situation, but I do think that they spent like a good half of the season getting us attached to Doyle, and I was really enjoying Doyle, and then ripping that away from us was really devastating because it feels like you're just getting to know these characters and then now you're getting to learn a completely new dynamic with Wes, because while in some ways it's similar and I think they tried to keep the same sort of vibe, and I almost feel like they went through it a little bit too much, like Wes being Doyle's replacement, and I think I would have liked a little bit more of like a distinction between them, even though there is, because Doyle, what he could bring to the team was all about like the powers that be and the visions, and sort of like he seemed to be guiding Angel a little into what he thought was right and what he thought they had to do and stuff like that. Whereas I feel like Wes is a little bit more of like the brains behind the equation because he's clearly good. They've started establishing in this scene, and I feel like this is something that I definitely sort of remembered from Angel, like the science-y side of Wes and the fact that he's really good at reading and like getting information and translating stuff, but also doing the whole science behind it of like finding out whatever they need to find, like dissecting the bodies of whatever the hell the creature is. Like, they serve different purposes and they are very different characters, but like they feel so similar because they are filling the exact same gap of the trio. And so that feels weird, but I don't know how exactly they would have fixed that because I do think that they handled it as well as they could. It is a really unfortunate situation, and I'm not sure if they ever planned on Wes coming into the show. This is actually something that makes me curious. Because they obviously sort of brought him in as a replacement for Doyle, but were they going to be bringing in Wes anyways, even if they didn't plan on getting rid of Doyle? Were they still going to bring in Wes, and was it going to be like 4 people instead of 3? Was that the original plan, or did they decide that they wanted to put in Wes? Like, was Wes actually supposed to go back to Buffy? Was Wes supposed to be gone? I'm curious about that. If anybody knows that, if anybody, talks to Joss Whedon on a daily basis and knows this sort of information, please let me know, because I'm kind of curious now. So I understand that there were things that they couldn't control. But that, I guess, in that sense, I feel like the relationships in Buffy were a little bit better established in season one because they were able to leave the season with me thinking, oh, wow, Buffy, Xander, and Willow are literally the cutest friendship ever. I would die for all of them, and they're like the best thing to have ever happened. And it's not that I didn't get this feeling in Angel, but I just feel like it's a different feeling in Angel. It's really different. Maybe because the characters also already knew each other going into the show, so it was more about how those relationships are changing rather than how they're starting. So I just feel like it's a different vibe. So I feel like Angel season 1 and Buffy season 1 definitely have, each one has like its perks of what I think worked out best and stuff like that, but overall I think this season was really solid. I feel like it almost feels like I'm dissing on it a little with all my like comments, but that's not exactly what's happening. Please understand. I really enjoyed this season. It came off to a solid start, and I do think that they did a really good job of separating Buffy and Angel. Because these shows seem so distinct, and it's actually really interesting. It's not that I thought that Angel was going to be a little bit of like a continuation of Buffy, and I thought that they were going to be following like down a similar route, but I definitely thought that. I don't know. I didn't expect the vibe in Angel to be so different. And I feel like I should have seen this coming because come on, I have seen Angel, and I feel like I should have known this, but like I'm sorry. I sometimes doubt the fact that there might be a brain inside my head. We're not sure about that. But I just feel like the Angel story and, like I said, vibe is a lot darker than Buffy, I think. Because if you really think about it, to me, Angel feels like three depressed people trying to find a purpose in life and joining together because of that. Because Angel's not happy, Cordy's not happy. I think Wes is having some sort of existential crisis, and I think that maybe Doyle might have been the happiest of them, even though he was still going through his own shit. But like, none of them really feel super happy. If I'm being honest, they all feel like they have a lot of like backstory, like a little bit of they're all going through their own things, and I feel like they're all trying to use Angel investigations as a way to find like purpose in their life and find out what to do. And I feel like Buffy has a little bit more of like an upbeat mood to it. It's about a vampire slayer, and she has friends who help her defeat the evil. And of course, that's not to say that Buffy is like happier, but I feel that like just because the first episode of Angel already had Angel literally killing somebody and somebody got killed, like there was a lot of murder, there was a lot of like, I don't, not bad vibes, but just like a heavy environment. I think Buffy does not create the same sort of heavy environment that Angel did, but it's good because I feel like it helps me separate the shows and know sort of what I'm going in for, because I feel like um while Buffy seems to be a lot more of an ensemble show, which I hadn't thought about, I think Angel is a lot focused on Angel as a protagonist. Um and I think again that makes a very big difference in the show because of course Buffy's the protagonist of Buffy. Like there's no, obviously like there's no doubt in my mind that she's the one who sort of carries the show. But I do think that they give a lot of importance to these side characters as well. Season 4 might be a little bit of an exception because I feel like yes, they were drifting apart a little, but I still think that like Willow carried almost the same importance as Buffy in season 4. Whereas I feel like Angel, he clearly is the protagonist. When I was thinking, I was coming up with some notes and I was trying to think about the different like character relationships in the show. I noticed that most of them were Angel versus somebody else. In Buffy, I feel like I had so many different pairings, and in Angel, it all felt like it came back to Angel. But that's really interesting though, because I think they're really setting him up as a protagonist, as like the key elements of the show and the one who's like a very big driving force of it. Which is very interesting, and I feel like it makes for a very specific tone of a little bit of nostalgia, because I feel like Angel is a very nostalgic character. He's always, I feel like, living in the past, living in like the happiness that rests in his mind, because he doesn't really have it like in the moment. So it's easier for him to just live in that imagery of happiness, and I feel like that translates to the show's vibe, you know And I just think about how many times I've wanted to cry in this show. Like, it's a lot. You know, I feel like it's not that Buffy season 4 wasn't as emotional. Um, but I don't think it was. I feel like Angel messed with my feelings a lot more with the Faith storyline, with the Angel storyline, with Doyle. Was there more? I feel like they really go down an emotional appeal, and I think it really works. In general, what other things do I think make it different than Buffy? I think they deal with monsters of the week very differently. Uh and mostly I feel like the big bad, because I feel like both of them have monsters of the week, but again, it's a very different thing. Whereas Buffy is sort of out to get the monster of the week, it feels like Angel's out to protect whoever it is the sort of monster of the week is attacking. Like, it's a different approach. It's among the same lines, but I feel like the cases in Angel investigations versus whatever monsters are attacking them ends up being different approaches to the story. Um, and again, I feel like it helps to establish the idea of Angel sort of being a savior. Not that Buffy isn't. I guess Buffy is too. Um, but in general, the shows were a lot more different than I anticipated, which is funny. A storyline that I do wish they had talked about more, though. I started talking about this already. I wish we had given a little bit more emphasis to the death, to Doyle's death. Because I feel like for me, that really hit me as a shock. Like, I knew Doyle wasn't going to last because I had seen the later seasons of Angel and I didn't remember his existence. I have to say that when I originally watched Angel, I do remember that before I skipped to like season 3, I think I did start watching the pilot. I didn't watch it in its entirety. I think I just watched the first few minutes. And I fully believed for like a long time that Doyle and Wes were the same person. Like, I thought that it was Wes the one who was Doyle in the first episode, and it was only a long time later that I figured out that it was not. So I feel like, see, in that sense, I feel like if they're filling in the same role in the show, it would be easy for somebody who's like not following the show, for example, to sort of end up thinking that they're sort of playing the same character in a way. Um, and I feel like if we had talked more about Doyle's death, maybe it would have been easier, even though it was pretty easy for me to accept Wes. I was really excited for him to come in, but I feel like most people wouldn't be. I feel like I have a very specific view of this because I have sort of seen, and I knew that Wes was going to come into the show. I knew he was going to be like the trio. I knew that it was Wes and it was not Doyle. So I knew that at some point this replacement was going to happen. So I think that that's the reason that it didn't bum me out, is that like I knew this was going to happen. I thought it was going to be later, but this was like a given in my head. And so I feel like I have been expecting it from the start, and I tried not to attach myself too much to Doyle because I knew that at some point he was going to be replaced. I didn't necessarily think he was going to die, but and I definitely thought that all of this was going to happen way further into season 2, but it is something that I expected and in a way knew. But at the same time, I feel like we didn't talk about grief enough. I think this show had all the potential to go down grief storylines, both with Doyle and with Kate's dad. And they shied away from it, I feel. Because, like, for some reason, I just think about Lie to Me, which is a Buffy episode I still haven't really forgotten, but I just feel like grief is such a huge thing to talk about and maybe one of the hardest ones to talk about when you're like dealing with TV and stuff. So I understand that it would be something hard for them to really write because they also wouldn't want to make something like super depressing. But at the same time, I feel like that's where like the richest sort of conversations and like storylines can come from seeing these characters grieve, because I feel like sometimes you might not even be that upset about a character dying, but seeing the way that other characters are dealing with that grief can be the thing that hits you. And I feel like as of right now, all of this grief is much more like in my head than in the actual show. Like, I have to fill in the blanks of what I think Kate is thinking about now that she lost her dad. And in a similar way, I feel like we did not give enough emphasis to Doyle. I do think that they had a few mentions here and there. I like the scene. It was horrible. Like, painful, but I do like the scene where Angel accidentally calls Wes Doyle, because I feel like that was the reminder that I needed, that like they still remember Doyle, because in some ways it almost feels like they're trying to forget him, maybe because it's too painful. And I know that Cordy and Angel had like one episode where they sort of talked about it a little, and I do like the fact that they were afraid of bringing Wes in because they were afraid of the same outcome. Like, I like all of that. I just wish they explored it even more. I wish they upped it a notch or made it last a little bit longer, but I feel like I also understand why they didn't, because I if they got too stuck in the Doyle storyline, it could feel like the show wasn't moving forward and we were just stuck in the past, kind of like Angel. And I guess that doesn't work for like screenwriting purposes. You want the story to move along, and that would really be keeping it in the same place. So it's like I understand, but like I don't understand, but like I have wishes, but like I would have suffered so much anyways. Because, I say this being fully aware that if they had done a really devastating storyline, like really talking about grief, I know that I would be like crying a little and like suffering and being like, this is not what I want, except it's like you never know what you want. And then, because it's like, it sounds good in my head because it sounds deep, but I know that the reality of it is that it would be a little bit devastating. But in general, yes, I wish we had explored that a little bit more. And I also think that a different way that they are distancing themselves from Buffy is in the whole big bad situation. Because I kept waiting for the big bad. I think that I really have a very hard time letting go of things. I think I'm a little bit of like a planner. I just like organization. So I guess this might be why I'm always looking for the big bad, because it's like I want to know how it all connects, and I want there to be like a common thread. Like, I want to see the full picture. I want the full organization of knowing that somebody sat through and thought about like how they're going to sprinkle in the big bad a little bit here, a little bit there to make it like into a story or something. Like, I get really invested into finding out who the big bads are. So I did spend a good part of Angel looking for a big bad, until it seems like it's not really going down that route in the same way that Buffy does. Even though they might in season 2, because Darla's like really seeming like a big bad. I will be doing predictions later though. I forgot to say that in the beginning of the video. I'll obviously be doing predictions for season 2, just like in the end of the video, so that I have enough time to actually talk about and think about the season before I have to get my brain into like prediction land. So it's cool because it makes it again different than Buffy, because I do remember, like, if there's one thing that is like a vibe that I remembered from Angel, was that it was sort of all about like prophecies and stuff like that, which is cool because it feels like they started setting that up. And I do think that seems to be their big bad, much more than like a one individual who seems to be out for them and stuff like that. So this is cool because I do think that season 1 was establishing that Angel vibe that's going to be following us until the rest of the show, of the oracles and the powers that be and prophecies, because I feel like that's the Angel that I remember. And I think that separates it so much from Buffy, that seems to be much more about like a big bad and how do we defeat the big bad kind of thing. So I like that like this adds a new level to Angel, of just separating it into its own show and making something a little bit more distinct, which I really seem to enjoy. I feel like prophecies can be so interesting because it's like you sort of believe them, but at the same time you're like, there's got to be a catch, because like there's just gotta be a catch. Like, there's no way Angel could die in the finale. I was a little bit worried. And I do think that the finale, by the way, was such a solid episode. I think the season 1 finale of Angel was so much better than the season 4 finale of Buffy. No offense. It set up things so much better for season 2, because season 4 of Buffy, in my mind, I was struggling so much to make predictions because I was like, I have no idea where this show is going. I have no idea what I just watched. And like, I don't even mean just episode 22, but even 20 and 21, the Yoko Factor and Primeville, like I did not know what was happening. I kept waiting for like something to revert. Like, meanwhile, Angel knew what they were going for, went there, gave me really good setups for season 2 in a way that I was like, oh, this is cool. I can actually make predictions for this show, which I couldn't in Buffy. And of course, it seems like I'm dissing on Buffy now. I just mean that, like, I have no idea what's happening on that show, whereas Angel's giving me so much comfort right now because I'm like, oh, I can see where this thread is gonna go. I mean, I might be totally wrong because my predictions have been a little bit off lately, just a little though. So of course, maybe I'm wrong, but like at least I can have more specific predictions. So in general, I think they did a really good job of setting up the different angel vibe with these prophecies and stuff like that. And I do think that even the monsters that they had were really interesting and like right from the start too, because I feel like this is not a very loved episode, but 102, like Lonely Hearts, I think, or something. I thought that was one of the most creative monsters we have seen in the entire Buffyverse. Like that monster was cool, man. And 103, like the Spike episode, I'm pretty sure. We also got to see that like vampire torturer, like that guy, like that really creepy guy who I kept waiting would like come back or something. Like again, that was such a compelling villain and like creepy. And I just remember the music that he listened to. Like he just had a creepy like vibe and like aura, and so I think that they're doing a really good job, not just with the monsters of the week, but the establishment of the stories as a whole and making us understand that, like, you may see Buffy in the show, but this is not Buffy. And I'm like, okay, I understand it now. I understand it. And I do feel like the crossovers in Angel seem to always hit me harder than the ones in Buffy. I feel like they kept the big good ones in Angel, if that makes sense. Because Pangs, I was frustrated. I will remember you. I was thriving. And what were the other ones like in the end of the season? And for example, Buffy's appearance in Angel and Sanctuary hit me so much harder than Angel's appearance in Buffy right after, and the episode right after, where I think it was the Yoko factor actually, right? So I feel like for some reason Angel has been really hitting me harder with these crossovers than the Buffy equivalents to them. This is not to say that the Buffy crossovers aren't good, but I like that they're keeping the action on Angel because I think it does compel you to watch the show. I love that we got to see like Oz coming to Angel. It feels like the characters much drift towards Angel a lot more. It just makes it more interesting because we sort of have seen these characters in Buffy, so it's more interesting to see them in Angel because we're very familiar with having Cordy and Buffy, for example, but we're not familiar having Buffy with Cordy in Angel. Like it's a completely different vibe. It's a completely different feeling. Um, and yeah, I guess I do want to talk about Cordy a little because like how can I not talk about Cordelia? She is the queen of my heart and possibly this show. To me, she low key makes the show just because I love her. And even if I might not be into an episode as much, I know that like I'm gonna have her to count on because she can always make me laugh, anyways. And it's just a comforting feeling to have a character that you love so much. This is not to say that I don't love Angel and Wes, but I just obviously have connected to Cordelia in a much deeper level from the very first moment that I met her. She is the love of my life, and so definitely she ups the show to a whole other level for me. But I have to say that like I was really struggling with the end of season 3 and the thought of Cordy leaving Buffy because it felt so devastating to me that she wouldn't be a part of whatever storylines we were exploring in Buffy. I was just like I was really upset, you know, about the fact that she wouldn't really know what was happening. Um it just felt like she was going to be so detached from the gang, and I think from the moments that I started Buffy and I knew that like Cordy was in it, I guess I sort of expected her to really be a part of the squad, to like be at the same level of friendship that like the trio is in regards to like Xander, Willow, and Buffy. And she never got that. She did eventually become a part of the squad, but she was always a little bit more detached. So I feel like we never got to that point that I was like waiting in regards to Cordy. And so I was really afraid that when we were like losing her, getting her to go to Angel, that we were never going to accomplish that. And I was never going to have her as like feeling like a true part of Buffy. And even though she did, I feel like the transfer to Angel made so much sense. Like I see it now. I was a little bit pissed. I didn't want to lose her, but um Angel treats her so much better. Um because they have the opportunity to. I mean, I understand why Buffy couldn't give Cordy that much emphasis. Like they had so many storylines going, and because it feels like an ensemble show, they aren't just focusing on Buffy. They're focusing on Xander and Willow and Giles. So they have like all these storylines to focus on. Whereas Angel, because we're just starting now, we get to explore so much more of Cordelia. There's more Cordelia screen time. There's more chances for her to have her storylines and development. Like, we get to focus on her a lot more. So while that was like a concern at first, I do think that this was the right move. It hurts, and I do definitely want to see her have a crossover with Angel. I do hope this happens, to have her crossover, actually not crossover to Angel. I want her to crossover to Buffy. Really hope that happens at some point so that we can see how she's gonna feel about like the college environment, because I feel like Buffy also changed so much that I want to see how she would fit into that storyline. Even if for an episode, I would be curious to see if her relationship with them would change, because it seems like her and Buffy are still not super close, but she was on the phone with Willow the other day, and I am like so curious to know about her feelings about Willow and Tara. You know, I would love for her to meet Tara and those kind of things. I feel like there's so much happening in season 4 of Buffy, and like those storylines and that very specific like world that they're creating that Cordelia has never been a part of, and I want her to be able to be immersed into there, even if just for an episode, just to see how it feels. So my wish for season 5, Anya, are you listening? Thank you. My wish for season 5 is that Cordy can guest star in Buffy, because I miss her there and I want to see what that's about. I don't want her to like fully go back into the show, because like I said, Angel gives her so much more opportunities, but I do still want to see her there for a whole second. And in regards to Cordy, like this is so interesting, because I feel like I was just talking about this in my Q&A video. My opinions about Cordy are like a little bit fascinating to me, because I did meet her at a season 3 or something, and I do remember saying in my very first video of Buffy that the two things that I knew was that Willow was gay and I loved Cordelia. Like I was biased towards Cordelia or something. And I just said that because like I liked Cordy's character. I thought she was fun, and I just I don't know. I guess I liked her more than I would like other characters just because I knew her. But like I sort of fell in love with her in the pilot though. Like the way that Cordy was done in the pilots was what actually grabbed me to her, because even though I had seen her in Angel and I liked her, it was the pilot that made me like love her for some reason. I think she had the best quotes, best humor, which she definitely kept on Angel. Like I would just like to emphasize that Angel, the show, the series, it's called Angel the series, right? Angel the series is hilarious. So much more hilarious than I could have imagined. Like I did not think Angel would be a funny show, but they really go into the humor there. I feel like you would expect the humor to be on like Cordy and like Wes and Doyle, but Angel, man, he was hilarious. He had so much humor that I had never seen, so I feel like the show really gave him a chance to shine in regards to that. I do think that the pilot was like peak humor, and it also reminds me of Buffy, because I feel like Buffy season 1 also had great one-liners. It was very much focused on the humor, and there is still a lot of funny things in Buffy, but I do think it like died down a little. And I do think that like the beginning of season 1 of Angel was hilarious, and I do think that they still kept a lot of the humor. Like I just picture Angel dancing in my head. That was something. So it's not to say that like they dropped the humor, but I do think that specifically the first part of the season was like so hilarious. Episode like the first episode of Angel was literally like a comedy show. I shit you not. But back to Cordelia, of course. I can't believe I got sidelined with that. Definitely liked her for her humor in the pilots, but I do think that getting to actually see her changing right now and all the character progress that she's been doing has been an amazing experience. I think I should save this conversation a little bit for like the actual Cordy talk and just characters, like thinking about how the character arcs changed. But I have to say that like I am just very overall pleased with Cordelia and Angel. That is my consensus after watching 22 episodes an entire season, is that Cordy belongs in Angel. It is fun, and I am obsessed with her. Love her. She's the best. Best. And I also want to briefly talk about like expectations versus reality. Um this was a lot better than I imagined, and this is on me. just in the sense of because I was not super paying attention when I was watching Angel. Like, I was watching the show because of Amy Acker, so I was very focused on like her character because that's the one that I was interested in because I had started the show like when she came in, so I did not have the backstory for any of these characters. Like, I did not know what I was signing up for. So this is totally on me. I was just watching the show with a completely different vision than I am now. And so while I thought the show was fun, it didn't like hit me as hard because I was not really focused on like all that. So watching it now, I'm like, oh, this show actually has a lot of potential and is actually a lot better than I would have anticipated. So I have to say that, like, even though I think that I already watched like the best seasons of Angel, my mind was not there. I didn't know the characters. I was not like paying attention to that. I was very much invested in Fred. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I feel horrible for saying this, but it's true. I was just not paying so much attention. So I do like now that I'm watching it from season 1, I'm like I can totally see where they're going and I really enjoy this. So I have to say that like my expectations for Angel were not super high because I didn't think he was the most compelling character in Buffy. He just seemed like a love interest and he just seemed kind of bland. I think that they've really been able to make him a much more compelling character and protagonist and hero. So I think that like that has been a lot better than I thought. And I do think that Cordy fit into the show well. Like overall, I was a little bit concerned about potentially not being into Angel as much, but I do think that I have genuinely been enjoying it. I think the crossovers also really help because they always get me like excited for them, and it's good to see characters like Faith and Darla that like we know but we haven't seen in a little while. Like I think they did a really good job with Angel. I think it definitely exceeded my expectations, which is fun because I feel like season 1, I highly doubt that is the best season of Angel. I feel like season 1 of any show, it's the establishment of the show, which I think they did a really good job. But I do like it's comforting to know that it's only going to go uphill. So I do think it's going to get better. So I like that I enjoyed this season because that means I'm definitely going to enjoy the other ones even more. So I'm very excited to continue this actually, which is good. I have to say that I was a little bit concerned for a while that I was going to be watching Angel but not super digging it, and I don't think I dig it as much as Buffy yet. I do think that maybe that's going to change, but I still think that like it has a lot of potential, and I do think that something that might change a lot of my feelings about Angel is having more characters be introduced, because I have to say that we only have 3 main characters and that feels too little. The fact that we only have 3 names in the intro, like it works because it's establishing them as like a really important trio and like it's sweet, but at the same time I feel like I want more. I feel like Kate could have definitely made it to the intro. I feel like by the end of the season, they could have definitely put in Lila and Lindsay or something like that. I feel like there are some characters that they could have definitely given more emphasis to if they wanted. So I'm really excited for season 2 because I do feel like the intro has got to go past 3 characters because 3 characters we have established is I think too little. So I'm excited to see who are going to become the other series regulars. Of course, I have my predictions, and I guess we're going to talk about that in the end of the show. Not at the end of the show. Don't worry, before. I guess we'll talk about it in the end of the video. But I do think that like the more characters that we know and stuff like that, the more compelling the story is going to be, because the more into it you can get, because even if you're not into a specific storyline, there are going to be a lot of different storylines that are happening that's always going to keep you interested in at least parts of the episode or the season or stuff like that. So very promising future for Angel of the Vampires. The last thing I want to talk about that's in my general notes before I head into like actually character and character relationships and stuff like that is that I thought the flashbacks were interesting. This was another cause of concern because I guess because Fred wasn't really in the flashbacks, at least not that I can remember, I was not really paying attention to them, was I? No, I'm a terrible watcher. I sincerely apologize to the Angel writers. I am very sorry to anybody who likes Angel. This is my sincerest apology for watching this show completely wrong. In my defense, as always, please blame Amy Acker. At Amy Acker. Complaints go to her, not to me. But anyways, the flashbacks were a very big concern because they did start doing them a lot more in Angel than they ever did in Buffy. And I was like, oh no. Oh no, this is oh no. I was worried, and I think that the first ones I wasn't necessarily super into them, but I think that the more flashbacks they're showing me, the more into it I'm getting. I think the Prodigal episode was great. Like it had the best uses of flashbacks because it connected to the actual story. I think like it really really worked. So my conclusion like with the flashbacks is that like I feel like as long as they have like they serve a purpose, they have something that they're doing, I think they really work. And I like that the flashbacks were such a good way for us to talk about Darla because I feel like it would be so easy for a regular viewer to forget Darla. I hadn't because I knew she was coming back and I was waiting for this bitch. But I feel like a casual viewer who's just watching the show, as soon as Darla's gone, she's sort of like, oh, she's dead. She's sort of gone from my mind. And so these flashbacks were a great way of like reinserting her into the story because it wasn't on the nose or anything like that. They were just flashbacks and they were just establishing that relationship. And so when you see her in the last episode, you know exactly who she is because they spent the entire season reminding you of her and setting up Angel and her relationship, which was so interesting because I feel like what I'm really enjoying about the flashbacks is that while you can hear about things and like history, it does work, but seeing it is different. I like the flashbacks because I feel like they're giving me a completely unbiased version of the truth. Because I feel like whenever you're telling a story, you're going to tell it with your perspective. And seeing the flashbacks, it's like there is no perspective. It is just an objective view of the truth. And I really enjoy that. So the flashbacks were a very big cause of concern. And I thought they might really turn me off the show Angel. But right now, I've really been enjoying them. They have served their purpose. They have been furthering the story. They have been furthering our understanding of these characters. And so I'm excited to see what flashbacks they're going to do in season 2. And I do hope we get to somewhat see Drusilla flashbacks so that we can manifest her coming back into Angel or Buffy or just anywhere at all because I really miss her and I still want to see my Spike and Drew endgame. I really, really want that. I'm not gonna lie to you. Okay, so now I think we should talk a little bit about character arcs. So I picked a few characters that I thought were like important this season so that we can talk about how I saw them changing, if I thought that was good, if I thought that was bad, if I thought it was enough. You know, we'll just talk a little bit about character arcs. And I want to start with Angel, of course, because he is the protagonist. He is the key element of the show. And overall, the vibes that I got from Angel were very similar. I feel like the vibes that I got from the 3 main characters, which is why I was sort of calling them depressed, is that they all really feel depressed. I think this is like the overarching like link in between them is that they're a little bit depressed and they're all trying to find a purpose in their lives. So that's interesting because I do feel like Angel had been really going through it the entire season. He started the season with like being depressed over Buffy and understanding that he could never be truly happy. And then, you know, he sort of started getting over it. He was like, yes, Kate, like, you know, we're going somewhere else. And then Buffy comes back and Angel has like the worst experience of his life where everything is taken away from him. And he's reminded that like, oh, you thought you could be happy. You thought you could be normal. You can't. And this is what it feels like. Like now he knows exactly what he's losing. So it just made it like 10 times worse. And after that, man, I don't think Angel ever recovered. I think he's just been depressed ever since I Will Remember You. And I very much relate because that episode really made me want to go to therapy. It was very devastating for me. So I like, though, that in the end, I think we finally caught a glimpse of happiness and hope in Angel, which thank God, because I had been concerned for him because he just seemed to really be living just to live. It didn't feel like there was anything that made him actively want to be alive. And I feel like now he seems to have a purpose, which is like to just to be a human, to stay alive. And that's fun because I do think that that adds on some sort of like depth to his character in regards to maybe he's going to be able to stop being so nostalgic and he's going to try and focus on a future, like a future plan rather than having to live in the past, because that's the only place he can do that without like endangering himself into becoming Angelus. So I do like that they seem to be setting up something new for season 2, because I do think that if Angel is just depressed over Buffy the entire show, it's going to be really depressing. It's going to be really sort of, we're not going to change from that place. And so I like that the end of the season seems to be really turning him into a new direction that I'm so excited to see where that's going to go. So yeah, curious about Angel. My feelings about Cordelia, as always, are many. Cause it's heartbreaking, but I do think Cordy's kind of depressed because it seems like she had all these high hopes about her life after high school. And I think that she is realizing that she peaked in high school, which is not a fun discovery. Like, she was really popular, she was it, she was at like the top of the food chain, let's say, and now she's having to realize that that is not how it works in real life and that things are actually very different. So I'm concerned about her because it doesn't feel like she has a bunch of friends in LA. Like, none of them really seem to talk about more than the other. Like, the trio seems to only interact within themselves. And I kind of want to be able to see them like branch out a little and get new friends. I think maybe Angel's the only one who does that with I'm so sorry. I just came up with a prediction like halfway through and I have to write it down so I don't forget. I was saying that I think Angel's the only one who potentially went a little bit away from the trio because he seemed to be developing a relationship with Kate, which is great. But like Cordy, man, I know that she was throwing parties and stuff like that, but it doesn't feel like she has people she can count on or like other friends other than Angel and Wes and I guess Doyle, RIP. So I want more for Cordelia. I want her to be able to actually like get into LA because I know that it's like not the place for everybody. And I also like the way that they set it up this season, it almost feels like LA is not the place for her and this is not the life for her. Just because I don't think she feels like the happiest. I think she feels a little bit like stuck and like not knowing what to do. But I do hope that like I feel like now after this last episode and the realizations that she's had about the visions, I think they've changed her. I think she understands why she needs to help people. Like, I feel like the visions were always a burden for her, and she was really pissed off that she was chosen to do this. She was really angry at Doyle for giving them to her. But I think that right now, in a similar way that Angel just made the switch of like sort of having a purpose, I think Cordy had hers too. Because I think that she understood that like, oh, these visions are here for a reason, and instead of like being upset and angry at them, I can actually use them to help people. So I do think that there is a difference in Cordy's mentality, and hopefully that is going to change how she's dealing with her life, and hopefully she's going to be a little bit happier. Like that's all I want for Angel characters, is for them to be happy, because they all feel so sad, man. It's not fun for me to watch. Like, I really want them to go to group therapy and talk about it and try and figure out what's wrong, but I am overall just very excited. I'm a little bit concerned about this new Cordy storyline because they did make her out to almost seem like a new person at the end of the episode, and I don't want her to suddenly become all serious and like not joke around, because that's not the Cordy that we know and love. So I do hope that she has some maturity, but I hope that doesn't change how she goes about her life. In some ways, yes, but I hope it doesn't change her overall energy. Next person I want to talk about is Mr. Doyle. Because I think that he was definitely a character that was changing. I think that even though he might have a little bit of a depressive energy like all the other characters on this show, I think that overall he seemed to be okay and happy about what he was doing. I do think that like out of the three of them, Doyle seemed to be the most excited about everything. It's because I'm trying to remember. Again, I will reiterate what I said in my Buffy video. The hard part about doing these reaction videos is that I started season 1 of Angel 7 months ago. It's been 7 months since I saw the very beginning of Angel, so it's been like a really large amount of time since I have seen Doyle. And so I can like I remember some of it, but some of it is also just fading out in my head because I have mentioned I have the world's worst memory. But the vibe that I have in my head is that he seemed to be a little bit happier than Cordy and Angel. Like he seemed to be bringing in a little bit more of like an upbeat thing to them in a way. I feel like he was a fun character because he was sort of growing on you. I think because like we knew Cordy and Angel, but we didn't know Doyle, so I feel like he had to work a lot to be able to get the same amount of like I want to say respect and love from us because we already had an attachment to Angel and Cordy that we did not have to Wes. So I feel like he had to work hard, but I think that he was doing a good job at getting us to like him. Because I do think that like every episode more, I was like enjoying this character more and more because he felt like it felt like they were setting up so much for him, especially after we met Harriet. I still don't exactly remember her name, but like meeting his ex-wife and all the potential that that seemed to create. Um, and the romance that they were setting up with Cordy, I was like, the more that we saw of him and the more backstory we got from him, because his last two episodes had so much Doyle backstory. Like the more we knew about that, the more we explored that, the more I saw a future for him and the more that I was invested in his character. And so that's why it really hurts when they take it all away. Um and I do something I just realized I never really talked about the idea of Cordy and Angel when they originally came into Angel, because I have to say that I genuinely thought that Cordy and Angel would be transferring into Angel together. Like it would be sort of a thing of they become friends in Buffy, and Angel says he's going to LA, and Cordy says, "Oh, hey, I'll go with you," or something like that. So it was a completely different experience for me to see that they were not actually friends, that we're getting to see them become friends. And I really like that we're following that story. And I should totally keep this for the when I'm talking about their relationships. I should not go down this spiral right now. I'm not going to. I'm trying so hard to follow an order that makes sense so that you guys don't get drowned in domey thoughts, but it is so damn hard. But I'm trying my best. So, what I think was interesting about Doyle is that while I feel like Angel and Cordy had a little bit more of like a stable storyline in the sense of they never actually had to prove themselves to us, we just already went into the show liking them. I like the fact that your feelings about Doyle actually change, and the more that you get to know him, the more attached you get. Like, there was a whole storyline that they were going with him, and I guess that's what makes his death even worse. But overall, I feel like Doyle had so much potential. Um, and it was really fun to start seeing where that was going. Yeah. Um, and Wes, I feel like, again, like has a similar role of having to prove himself because I feel like while Cordy and Angel were a little bit, it's not that he wasn't as likable, but I do think that like we had already established Cordy and Angel as friends, and so when Wes comes in, even if we know him, he still has to prove himself to us that he could make sense in this environment. Um, so it was very interesting to see how Wes has been fitting in, and I like to see how he's changing because I think he came into the season with the thought of being like a little bit more, let's say, physical. Like he came in being like, I am a badass and I can kill these demons. And I think that what we have established by the end of the season is that he's a lot more the brains of the equation, you know, because he was translating the prophecies and he was doing some science stuff in previous episodes. And I think that's where he can actually be helpful, and I think that's actually something he likes. So I like that there was a very calm transition though. Like it is only now that I'm thinking about the season as a whole that I'm noticing that we had a very big transition in how Wes changed, because at first he was all about like proving himself to Angel and pretending like he was the bigger badass. And I think he was just trying to prove something to himself after losing that Watcher job. I think that just really got to him emotionally, and he was just trying to show that like he can do things on his own and that he's powerful. But I like that now his realization is coming that like he doesn't need like physical strength to prove himself. He can prove himself in other ways. So I think that's a really interesting character arc for him, and I do think that we're going to be further exploring that. You know, the more that we get into these seasons, the more we're going to see the ways in which he's going to become more like honest with himself about what he actually wants to do and how he can help without Like, of course, it's good to push yourself out of your comfort zone, but it's not good to be doing something just because you feel like that makes you look cool or whatever. So I do like that he seems to be coming to terms with what works for him. And overall, I just find him to be one of the most relatable characters of the show. I think, to me, I think if I had to pick a character, I think I would say I'm a lot of a Wes. Because I'm a really huge klutz and stuff like that. I don't think I'm the brains of the equation, as my reaction videos have probably exemplified, but I just relate to his like energy. And I do think that he's always trying. Is he fucking up sometimes and like putting themselves into bad situations, or like just are things working out for him? Not always, but he's always trying. And I think he always has that energy of just keep trying. I think the only episode where we saw him seem kind of defeated was the one with Faith, where he seemed to have genuinely given up. But I feel like he has this more upbeat energy to him, I think, than maybe Angel and Cordy, who seem to be a little bit defeated by life. I think similar to Doyle, Wes still has a little bit of that like vital energy inside of him of like, we can make this work and stuff like that. I have to say that he is one of the characters that I'm most excited to see how he's going to change, because I do think that he had one of the biggest character growths of season 1. So I want to see how that's going to continue, because I feel like it's gotta, right? Yeah. Okay, next character. We should talk about Kate, because she's on my mind, because she's always on my mind. Kate is such a fantastic character. She is so great. She is so interesting, and she's so like nice deep down, but she's also completely badass. So I guess she reminds me of Buffy in that way. Like, she's a good person, except she can totally kick some ass, and I think that she could be such an asset to Angel Investigations, like we set up in regards to like using the police to help them. And I had such high hopes for her. I thought she was definitely going to become like a key element in Angel Investigations. I fully thought she was joining them. I thought she was going to be in every episode. Like, honestly, and I don't want to say this because I'm so scared I'm jinxing something, and I'm petrified of having these words come out of my mouth, but Angel writers, please don't do anything mean. But I do think that Kate is like the Jenny of Angel, because she's a character that I love and that I think is so interesting, and I want to see more of her. And the writers are like, we'll bring her in like every like now and then, and I'm like, this is not enough, I want more, you know. So she gives me a similar vibe in that way. I'm petrified of saying this because I don't want them to pull a Jenny and kill her off, because I'm gonna be so pissed. But I do think that like this entire vibe of like feeling like she has so much more to offer and the writers are not going there is very frustrating to me. I feel like I can understand Jenny more because I think they had so much going on in season 2, and that's not to say that they didn't have it in season 1 of Angel, but I do think that like because the show was so focused on Angel, if we did focus on like other characters like Kate, for example, there could be other storylines that could happen and stuff like that. Like maybe have her interact with people that are not just Angel and stuff like that. But I don't know. Overall, I don't know why she is such a compelling character to me, but she really is, and I really hope that we get to see more of where her storyline is going. I do think that there was so much, again, like untapped potential in regards to talking about her grief in regards to her father, because I feel like losing a father who's a good person seems a little bit more straightforward of like, you're gonna grieve and sort of that's it. But losing a father who you have a complicated relationship with could be really hard for her, because she's not gonna want to grieve, but she will be grieving. And I feel like there's going to be more feelings than just grief that would be coming out. Like there might be some anger, there might be some resentment, there might be some regret. Like there are so many things that could be following that grief and that I wish we had followed in regards to her storyline. And I do think that like when she found out Angel was a vampire, I think she had one of the most like rational like ways of dealing with it, of going straight to like research and stuff like that. So it's a little bit sad that they really seem to grow apart after that episode, because I assumed that like her finding out the truth was going to change everything for them, and that like it was going to be hard, but it was going to bring them together. Because I kind of imagined it similar to Buffy and Riley, that like while knowing the truth about each other was a little bit hard to digest. They got so much closer after that. And I thought the same was going to happen to Kate. Like, I did expect her to have some sort of like problems with it at first. I did think it was going to take a while for her to come around, but I thought she was going to come around, and it really seems like she didn't, because having a vampire kill her father really sets things up for like Angel's demise. Like, I can't even blame Kate. That's what's annoying. Like, I feel like it makes sense. Her reactions make sense. I wouldn't want to be friends with Angel either. No offense, you know. And I do understand that like she needs somebody to blame for her father's death, and Angel is the logical explanation, because like he is a representation of vampires, and because he is like one person that she can put her anger and grief into. But it's so frustrating, because I just want them to get along. I just want them to talk. And like, I was so sure that that was going to lead to a relationship, but we'll talk about that in like actual relationship part of things. So my overall thoughts about Kate is that her storylines did not go where I expected this season, which is interesting because it keeps me at like the tip of my toes. But at the same time, leads me wanting more. I want more of Kate. That's it. Okay, other characters. I feel like I already talked about Faith in my Buffy video, so I feel like I don't have to talk about her so much here, but I do just want to say that I think she had like the most incredible character progress ever. It was just an incredible episode, an incredible change, an incredible maturing of Faith, and I think that like, again, I just want to praise her for it. I could talk about this all day. I just think it was so great. And I loved seeing what Angel could provide for her. So, yeah. Overall, I just wanted to say Faith's name so that I could praise her again. I'm just saying. Okay. I want to talk about Darla. Even though she just came in right now, I just wanted to say that like she was such a prevalent part of the flashbacks, like I said. And overall, it's just so exciting to bring back a character that so many people have probably sort of forgotten, or like has been really just in the back of their minds, because it feels like such an insane thing to do. And I'm really excited about all the doors that can open, and how the relationship is going to change going forward. Okay, other characters. I'm going to talk about Lindsay, because I'm having a really hard time dealing with my feelings about Lindsay, because he, especially in the finale, he really proved himself to be a little bit of a dick. Like, he was definitely not helping us. But at the same time, I don't know what's happening to him, to me, actually. But ever since they presented us to this Lindsay backstory, I just can't seem to hate him. I've tried, because I don't think that he's not doing things I agree with. And I have all the reason to hate him, because he did make the wrong choice. And I can't bring myself to blame him for these decisions, because I feel like everything that happened in his life has led him to this. Like, I feel like he barely had a choice, which is what's frustrating me. And I feel like the only reason that this is happening is because of Angel. No offense, Angel. I did say this in my, I think it was 121 reaction, right? I do think that if Angel had showed him the same support that he showed Faith, he would not have gone back to them. He would not be in Wolfram and Hart right now. But they never believed in him. Nobody ever believed in him and believed that he could change and believed that he wanted to do good things. So why would he? It feels so similar to Faith's storyline of like, nobody believed in her for a while, and so she just decided to go bad because that's what everybody thought. And I feel like that's exactly what we're seeing happening to Lindsay. And I feel like in some ways, of course, he has to be culpable about what he's doing, because like he is doing bad things. And I don't think that like I should excuse that. But at the same time, I just feel like there's so much reasoning to it. Like, different than Lila, who we don't have a backstory and who I feel much, I have a much easier time hating her than I do him. So I love how much depth there is to his character, because he's not a character that I would have imagined that we would actually talk about and that we would get an entire episode focused on him. But I think it worked out so well, because it really blurred the lines of like evil and good in my head, which is something that Buffy does so much, where we're finally talking about the idea that like not all demons and vampires are bad. And I feel like right now, having Lindsay be so like such a layered character makes me feel like, oh, maybe not all Wolfram and Hart lawyers are like all bad. And it just brings back this idea of not all of them are, or not all the people who might seem evil are actually evil. So I'm just really excited because I feel like his storyline has so much potential, and I would not think that I would like a Lindsay episode or that I would be interested in his backstory, but I really am, and I do hope that we get to talk about it even more because I feel like there's so much that they could discuss about this. And I guess that leads me to talking about Lila a little because I definitely recognized her face, so that's good. That's something. I don't exactly remember what happened to her, but I know that she's there, and like she lasts a little. She's definitely got to last at least past season 2. So that's interesting. Even though I never know, like when I say last, like she could very much leave for an entire season and just come back, or she could even die, because now that they said at the Darla thing, she could die and they could bring her back. Like hell if I know. I don't know shit. But what I do mean is that like she seemed familiar to me, so it was very interesting to be presented to her when I don't think I have a set opinion on her. I don't remember if I liked her or not when I watched the show. So this is cool because I don't think I lean towards her so much. I think her and Lindsay seem to be like similar characters to me, and I was kind of a little bit indifferent about both of them. Like I didn't really like them because they really seemed to be like fighting for the wrong things. But then now that I liked Lindsay, I'm a little bit confused about where Lila falls into that because we haven't seen her backstory, so we don't know what got her there. And maybe knowing her backstory would change my mind about how I feel about her. But right now, she just seems kind of evil, and I don't totally dig her. So I'm curious to know about her because I feel like we didn't set her up a whole lot in regards to like who she is, what are her aspirations. Like we just know that she works for them. So she is a character that I hope that we get to explore in season 2 so that we can know what's going to happen with her, and like is she actually a bad guy? Like do we trust her, or is she actually a bad guy? Like I want to understand how the lines of good and bad cross with her too, just like we did with Lindsay. Another character, Gunn. We have to talk about Gunn. I am so surprised that he showed up in season 1. That was a shocker. That was something. And I feel like it was really interesting actually because when I was doing my character rankings during I do like a Patreon Q&A where I sort of rank who are my favorite characters this season, and I noticed that like Gunn seemed pretty low, like really low, like surprisingly low, which says a lot because I think that that's just because that means the show has so many other good characters that they just end up being in front of him. Because this is not to say that I don't like Gunn, but it actually made me excited to see how low he was because I feel like that's got to change. I feel like he's got to become more and more like lovable and interesting, and like the more we know about him, I feel like the more that I'm going to like him. So it was just interesting for me because I'm so excited to see how my opinions about him are going to change or not. It would be a little bit of a bummer if it didn't and he just kept being like a little bit low in my character rankings. That'd be a bummer. But I do think that he has all the potential to become a really interesting character. He seems willing to help, which I think is like a crucial thing for Angel Investigations because I feel like he has all the reason to sort of go against Angel because I'm surprised at how like open he has been to Angel and like vampirism because he seemed to be so opposed to it at first. So I like that he seems to have this really good energy and vibe around him where he's actually wants to help people and he doesn't have a single like bad bone in his body. He really just wants to help. He wants to do what's best. So I thought that was really cool, and getting to see his backstory because I did meet Gunn in the later seasons of Angel and I didn't know his backstory. I never knew what got him there or anything like that. So finally getting to see how it all, I guess, sort of started, not just in the sense of how he meets Angel, but also in knowing his backstory with his sister. Like that was really sad and really upsetting, and I feel like such an inciting incident of everything else that is going to happen, you know, like clearly this is the life-changing moment in his life, the one moment that changed everything. Nothing is the same, nothing can ever be the same after this moment, and I like that we were there to actually watch it because it feels like we're going to be able to explore the consequences of that and how things are changing. But again, I feel like this is another one of those moments of like grief that we could have explored because even though we wouldn't necessarily be bummed out about us losing this character that we just met, the sister, we could very much be bummed out based on Gunn's reaction, because he seems like such a badass, and seeing him break down a little is sort of devastating. But I feel like we didn't really talk about that grief that much. But overall, Gunn is another one of those characters that I'm so excited to see where he goes, because he's got to stick around. And I'm really curious to see how his relationship with all of the squad is going to change. I also put Harry/Harriet on my list, Doyle's ex-wife, because I love that woman. I think she was one of the best characters we have been presented to in the Buffyverse in regards of like one of the most interesting ones, because she seemed to know everything about demons. She could literally, like, that database that they have been using, demons or whatever, like, she is that database as a person. Like, there's just so much that she could bring into the story. I feel like she would be the best addition to Angel Investigations. I'm not sure if they would bring her back into season 2, because I feel like if they were to ever see this character again, I feel like they would have to have set her up at least one other time in season 1, because otherwise, like, we sort of forget her a little bit too much. Like, I do wish that we had seen her after Doyle's death, because she was presented before, so it makes sense for us to see her after and how she's dealing with that. And I don't know if she found out, or if the squad was gonna have to tell her, because that could be devastating. I feel like there's so many places that they could have gone with this story, and it doesn't look like they're going to explore this character, because they haven't talked about her at all. But just for me, I think she's such an interesting character. I think she has such an interesting backstory, and just she could really be an asset. And I'm still not over her, and I'm still gonna spend season 2 hoping that she shows up, because I think she would be a fascinating character for us to talk about. Not only that, but she could also be a great way for us to talk about Doyle. She is a great excuse for us to still stay in that, like, moment of grief for a little bit longer, and just not completely forget who Doyle is and everything like that. And lastly, I feel like we should talk about the Oracles really quickly, because I feel like their death really threw me off, because I feel like they had started becoming such interesting and important characters in the show, like, ever since I Will Remember You. Yes, in case you haven't noticed, I will find ways to mention that episode as many times as I can, just because I can and I want. But anyways, the Oracles dying really threw me off my game, because I feel like we had established them as important and interesting characters of, like, they are the connections to the powers that be, and now the connection seems to be severed, other than, like, the the migraines that Cordy gets. But it's interesting because they felt like such powerful characters that I never imagined that they could die. So now I wonder if they're going to be replaced by other oracles so that we still have that connection, or if it's just been severed and they just have to find a way to talk to the power that be that doesn't involve oracles whenever they do need the help from the powers that be and stuff like that. So it's interesting because they felt so mystical and magical and powerful, and like anything could happen if they existed, because they could, you know, fold time and potentially bring back Doyle. I feel like they gave this idea of anything is possible, and their death really shatters that and grounds it back to reality of like, no, things are just shit. So I'm a little bit worried about their death, but I'm excited to see if that's going to change in season 2 in regards to bringing in new oracles, or if we're just fucked. So we'll see about that. And now I want to do my awards, because I did this for Buffy and I thought it was fun. So I'm going to do my awards for biggest untapped potential in season 1 of Angel. Number 3, it was a little bit hard, because I feel like I had number 1 and 2 so clear in my mind. But I did say that number 3 would be Lila, because I do think that we got a chance to explore Lindsay, so it would be fun to see her perspective, because they seem to be in the same place, but probably got there totally different ways. So I think it would be interesting to see more about Lila's backstory. Number 2, we got my girl Harry. I still don't know your name, but I love you. I think she was such an interesting character. She had so much depth and like information to her that I wish we could have seen more. And number 1, unsurprisingly, is Miss Kate, because I love her. She's awesome, and they don't explore her nearly as much as I wish they did. And I gave a special mention to Doyle. I don't think I should have put him in the top 3, because I know that like that was not about them not wanting to give a storyline to Doyle. I think that they did. It was just a matter of not being able to. So he got a special mention because I do wish we had seen more about Doyle and understanding him more. I do feel like there was so much more that we could have done, but it is really a bummer, everything that happened with him. And now we can talk a little bit about character and their relationships with each other. Because even though there was not a lot of romance going on, there was still friendships and interesting relationships that we can still talk about. And it actually really is surprising how little of a romance there was, because I think I would have assumed that at least if Angel was not getting some action, that at least Cordy would. I mean, Wes maybe, sure, but I mean, like, I felt fairly confident that Angel and Kate were going to happen, and so I felt fairly confident that I guess for a whole second there, I thought Doyle and Cordy, or at least somebody with Cordy, like I have to say, they really seem to back away from the romance, which is fine because that's not what they're going for, and I respect it. We don't need the romance. It does give us a chance to explore these characters as more than that anyway, so it is fun. I feel like we should start talking about like the trio, the friendship, because I feel like that's like the key element of the show in a similar way that Buffy, Xander, and Willow are of Buffy. I keep repeating that, but I just think it's so damn important, and I do think that like this is what they're doing in this show. But the interesting part is that the trio changes halfway through the season, but in a way, it's still the exact same vibe, which is possibly why I get so frustrated that the Doyle was like that Wes was such a clear replacement of Doyle, is that like the trio, that friendship, it in a way it stays the same. In a way though, it definitely feels like Wes brought in something new, because what Doyle brought into it was like the connection to the powers that be and the visions, but then as soon as Cordy gets those, it's almost like Doyle's thing has already been given to Cordy. And so it's interesting that Wes seems to bring in a new perspective, because he's bringing in like the science, like studies behind it all. So it is changing. But I do think that like they've established that in a really sweet, sweet way. Like for some reason, I assumed that for these three characters that end up in Angel, that they would meet in Buffy and that they would really get along. And so I thought that by the end of season 3 of Angel, Cordy and Angel were going to become like really close friends. And then when he said, I'm off to LA, Cordy was going to be like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to go with you since I don't really have anything that's holding me here so much. Like, I assumed that they were going to already be friends going into the show. And so I guess I also sort of assumed that I guess Wes was going to get along with Angel, or at least Cordy. Like, I don't know. I guess I assumed that those friendships would already be established once we got into the show. And so I actually like that they're not, though, because it gives us a chance to really see those friendships being built. And I feel like that's so much more meaningful, because in a similar way that I loved seeing how Buffy meeting the squad, like meeting Xander and Willow, and how that relationship was formed, I think was possibly my favorite part of season 1. So it is really fun to see how their relationship has been growing, has been changing. And I think that, you know, especially Cordy and Angel really have been given a chance to bond this season because of the loss of Wes. Like, I thought it was very interesting that they both sort of seemed a little bit opposed to Wes, not because it was Wes, but because they were afraid that the same thing was going to happen. Like, they were so traumatized by what had happened to Doyle that they didn't want the same thing to happen to Wes. So I do like that Angel and Cordy seem to have this really strong relationship that has been growing and growing, and I'm so excited to see it grow like even more, because I feel like they're gonna get really, really tight. And you know, I think I remember having a feeling that the trio and those kind of things, like the squad, was really, really close. And I don't think we've reached that level of closeness yet, but that just means that it's going to get there, and it just makes me even more excited to keep watching, because I know that their relationship is not exactly going to die down or stay where it is. I think it's only going to get stronger. So that's really exciting. Other relationships, now I feel like I have to talk about romance a little, just in the sense of Buffy and Angel slash I almost said Buffy and Kate. I mean, that'd be interesting. A little bit disturbing. Yeah, maybe more disturbing than interesting, but still interesting. But actually, you know, Angel and Kate, because I was 100% sure from the moment that they started flirting and from the moment that they established that Kate was coming back and that she was not like for one episode, I was pretty much 100% sure that she and Angel were going to have something romantic. But I have to say that the way that the season has ended, I don't think they're actually going to lean into the romance, which is a huge shock because I feel like we got close to it so many times. Like we were almost there, and the writers kept like backing away from it and never making it happen. Which is really interesting because they're not afraid of shying into the Buffy romance. Like Buffy's having something serious with Riley, and they're really into that. But when it comes to Angel, I guess maybe Angel does the breakup with Buffy might hit him a little bit stronger because of I Will Remember You. He has the memory of everything that could have been, while Buffy seems to always be a little bit more annoyed at him. And, you know, Buffy gets pissed at Angel because she doesn't know the whole truth, which is heartbreaking. So I feel like while Buffy can resort to this like anger to deal with her sadness and frustrations about not being able to be together, Angel just as sadness because he's seen the truth. He has seen happiness and he knows that it's like almost like he can almost grab it, but it's out of reach by a little bit. And so I feel like it's normal that it would hit him more than her. So I guess it would make sense that Angel has a harder time dating than Buffy because he's also like more antiquated and I don't think he really like approaches women all that often. So I guess he's like not even thinking about that so much. I do think he seems to be more hung up on Buffy than Buffy does on him. And I do think that that might have been the feeling that I had gotten from watching Angel. I remember at the very beginning of Bangel, like when it finally started happening, I had gone into Buffy thinking that I was not gonna like it. Like I went into it biased because I thought that Angel seemed to be so into Buffy in a way that I didn't think Buffy was into Angel, even though I had never met her. I just, the way that he talked about it made it seem like he was obsessed with her and she was just like, he was just another boyfriend for her. But having watched the show, that completely changed my mind. Like Buffy was definitely into Angel, but I do think that Angel gets more hung up on her than she does on him, I guess. And I mean, I'm not judging Buffy. I think it's good that she's moving on. But I'm just saying that Angel's backstory of I Will Remember You, I think really, and his nostalgic vibes all around really do change. Like maybe if he was in college and, you know, so many different things happening, maybe he would be moving on. But I think it makes perfect sense where these characters are going. Um, but I do think that like the Buffy and Angel angst that Angel has put me through is truly insane because I had for reals gotten over them. Not gotten over them, but I had I had talked myself into understanding that they were never going to interact and that that was it. That graduation day part 2 is their goodbye and nothing else can ever happen in between them. And so seeing how they can actually go into each other's shows and they can still interact not once but twice. There were 2 crossovers where they interacted has truly made me transcend this earthly realm and makes me very excited because this means that well, I thought that didn't happen at all, but since it did, I guess that means it can happen throughout the show. So I'm excited because I feel like their last scene could have been a goodbye, but it could have also not been a goodbye, even though they did say we'll call next time. I feel like I can still see them meeting because I feel like their final scene has to be huge. I think it has to be I Will Remember You style. Because I feel like I Will Remember You was a little bit of the perfect moment for them to never see each other again because it was so meaningful and it was so big. And I feel like that's the height of shipping Buffy and Angel to a point where that was the perfect moment for them to end. I'm not complaining about seeing them again in like Sanctuary because that made me so damn happy, even though they were fighting and there were some problems. Like every time I see them together, it puts me back on those feelings. So I do think that whenever I think we might still have at least one more episode of Buffy and Angel like interacting with each other. And I do think that it's going to be a devastating I Will Remember You style of ending of just making you really ship Angel no matter what you ship on like other moments of the show. Because I feel like I Will Remember You can definitely bring in feelings even if you're not a huge Angel shipper, right? I think it can really get you. At least it really did for me. I think that's what I had to say like in the romance front because I feel like there was not too much happening in the romance section of things except for also Doyle and Cordy's relationship because that seemed to be going down a romance, and I don't think I was super digging it. I was not really feeling the chemistry, but I feel like the episode that he dies and like the sacrificial kiss, like all of that had really like seeing that, because I assumed Cordy was going to be opposed to it, but the fact that she actually seemed to be into it, I think had really changed my mind a little bit about them. So I think it's interesting that the moment that they were about to explore that, they were like, just kidding, he's dead. And I was like, okay, so I guess we're not going there. So I guess that was the only other romance, and I do think that they did a really good job of eventually switching my mind a little, because I was very opposed to it at first, and I do think that by the end, I was coming around to it. I think I was going to be okay with it. I mean, I'm not sure because we never actually got to see it, but I would think that I was going to be fine with it happening. But back to like friendships, because I think that that's like where like the relationships seem to be more around that realm. I'm gonna talk about Angel and Faith because I feel like their bond was insane, and I think it is definitely something that they had started setting up during season 3. Because matter of fact is they were like season 2 and season 3 sort of big bads, like the big bad betrayals from seasons 2 and 3. And so it's so interesting to see them talk like and in a way like bond about that. Like they went through similar experiences of being good people who ended up like becoming evil. Like, you know what I mean? Like they have a shared living experience, and I do think that they had started setting that up in season 3 when Angel was trying to talk to Faith and she was not open to it. Like she was not ready to hear it. And I think that it shows how much she matured to see all the ways in which she did switch, and like and by the end of 5x5 and Sanctuary, like we see how she actually has changed. And I think that Angel's support to her was amazing. I feel like he was really, I love how people have made this comparison of the way that they talk about like vampirism and stuff like that, like almost as if he was her sponsor of like alcohol and stuff, of like they really deal with that in a one day at a time kind of scenario. Like I like all the references they make to that, and I do feel like they very much have a sponsor relationship of like, it's not exactly friends, like they're not like best buds, they don't really talk or like get along, but they do have this like thing in common that they can talk about and they can help each other through it. So I thought that was really really completely unexpected but interesting. I would have not guessed that Angel would have been the one to help Faith. I would have actually expected it to be Buffy, because I do think that Buffy seems to be so forgiving and loving, and I do think that I assumed that she was going to be the one who was going to help Faith if she eventually switched. But I do like that it was Angel, because Buffy's never going to have that same understanding of Faith that Angel will. Angel's the one who actually understands her better than anybody else on the show, so I like that he was the one to guide her through this and to help her. And it ended up with like the best possible outcome, so I think he did a good job at helping her out. Um, Telling her what she needed to hear, giving her the support, you know, and not really blaming her so much, because it would have been easier to have like a reaction similar to what Buffy did in that episode, of just like, she doesn't deserve a second chance, like that's it for her. But he really genuinely believed in her, and I think that made all the difference into actually making her switch and eventually turn herself in. So I think that relationship might have been one of the best ones of the season, and it sounds so promising. So I do hope that we might get to experience a little bit more of that in the future seasons. I'm not sure if this is a friendship that they would develop upon, but I think it would be so interesting to see Angel and Faith actually become friends, because I still don't think they're friends. He helped her out and she needed it, but I don't see them as friends. So I do hope they get to become friends, because that would be fascinating to watch. Even though it would really piss off Buffy. I don't think Buffy would love that so much at this point in the show. But I don't know. I think Buffy's still gonna come around to Faith, because her writing this, like the Angel episode was very brutal. Like her reactions to Faith were very different than what it felt like in the Buffy episodes when Faith originally came back and she was asking her if she was okay and those kind of things. The final relationship that I want to talk about very briefly is Gunn and Angel, who I thought, like, based on the way that Gunn came in, he seemed like so like extreme, let's put it that way, that I assumed that they were going to be a little bit distant, that they were going to have their problems, but they seem to be getting along a lot quicker and better than I would have anticipated. So I'm excited to see how that relationship is going to change, because I like that Angel already immediately trusts Gunn and knows that he needs him. And while Gunn could be resistant to that and not really want to help out, I like that he seems to really be such a genuinely nice person that he's willing to help, sort of like no questions asked, he'll just do it. So that's a relationship that seems very interesting. There's so many relationships that I want to see them develop in season 2. That would have to be one of them. Of course, him with the rest of the squad too. I think mostly I want to see the other characters in the show relate like a little bit without Angel. Like I want to see how Cordy and Kate could be friends. That could be really interesting. Like maybe they'll find something that they can bond over or talk about or just anything at all. I feel like that could happen. That could be fun. I would love to see Cordy and Faith. If Faith were to come back to Angel, which I'm really hoping she will, because I do want to see how her relationship with Angel could change. I feel like I would love to see her bond with Cordy, and you know, Cordy with her snarkiness might be a little bit closed off at first, but it would be a really fun relationship to explore and stuff like that. Like I want to see these other characters and how their bonds might form. And another one that I'm so curious about would have to be Lindsay and Lila, because they seem to be like the representations of the big bad, other than the big bad boss, whose name I don't really remember. But I mean, like, they seem to be like the more hands-on, like the ones that we talk to and approach to the most. And so I want to see how their friendship is in between them. Do they get along? Do they tend to agree in things? Because I have my predictions for season 2, but I would love to be able to see if they're actually close or if they're just co-workers, because they could be really good friends, or they could actually be people who really don't enjoy each other's companies, and I want to know more about that. Which I think is a good segue into my season 2 predictions finally. Before I head into my predictions, I want to end the video with the predictions. So I think I'm going to answer a few questions. I selected a few of them that you guys sent on YouTube. Just because, similar to the Buffy one, I wanted to be able to involve you guys a little bit more in this process, because usually I do a Q&A for Patreon, but I felt like maybe people on YouTube had questions too, so I picked a couple. Okay. So, Tuxedo Mark asks, which did you like more, Angel season 1 or Buffy season 4? I feel like based on my discussions of the show, it might be a little bit more, it might be clear, but I do think I preferred Buffy season 4. But it should also be noted that while people tend to not like season 4, I actually really loved it, and it might have been one of my favorite ones of the entire show so far. So I think I would have to go with Buffy season 4, but that's just because I genuinely thought it was very strong. But I do think that Angel season 1 was also very solid. Okay. So Just James says, favorite episode and worst episode. Favorite episode, I Will Remember You. I almost said Sanctuary, but no, even though that is an amazing episode, I Will Remember You is my favorite Buffyverse episode. And I picked this question just so that I could say that, so that everybody would know. I Will Remember You, definitely my favorite episode. Least favorite, I think I would have to go with She. I don't know why I didn't like this episode, but every time I think about it, I get a little bit bothered. It was not my thing. I did not get into it like I should. Like, I think that the scenes were a little bit too long. Like, it felt a little bit draggy when he was talking to her. And I feel like it had all the potential to be an interesting episode. And I think that there were parts of it that were interesting. But I don't know why. Maybe the placement of that episode. She, when I think of like when the season went downhill for a second, it would have to be She for me. So I don't know why, but I think I would have to go with She for sure. Okay, the other questions are... So the next question is from Tasman Sims. They say, having already experienced part of how Angel's story plays out, what do you feel were some of the things you may have gained from watching the ending before the beginning? I think I was more receptive towards Wes. I think would have to be the biggest thing. I think the replacement of Doyle from Wes would have bothered me a lot more if I didn't expect it to come at some point in the show. So I think that really helped me in knowing that the trio, like, I know that the trio of Wes, Cordy, and Angel is so great, and I know I'm going to love them so much that I was comforted by that idea when I had lost Oz. So I think it did help me. Oz, wow. I went on a wow. My brain went not there. I clearly mean Doyle. And the loss of Doyle, I think that was a comfort to me and made me not like want to give up on the show completely, which could have happened if I was very frustrated. So I think that definitely helps. Like knowing what characters are going to eventually be important, like Gunn, in a way is very interesting because I get to pay attention to how they relate to the characters now. Like I know that they're going to change and I like that I can give emphasis to that, and like I can really pay attention to Gunn because I know that he's going to stick around and I know he's a character that's not going to be there for one episode, which makes me more compelled and more curious about his story, I think. So in general, I think it did help me with like my appreciation of the characters and knowing a little bit of what to pay attention to. I would say. Okay. Barbara Baker says, what surprised you the most in the new series? Did you have a moment where you're like, okay, that's the Cordelia I remember, or was that already felt in Buffy? And she said she has the same question for Wesley and Angel. I don't think so. As crazy as this sounds, and this was something that I was thinking about the other day, and it was a surreal thought to me. So I will be mentioning an Angel spoiler. The concept of Fred and Wesley recently occurred to me just out of the blue. I was thinking about them and I was like, oh man, I miss that relationship. It was so great. Like, I was just thinking about them and the fact that I missed being able to see their scenes because obviously I won't rewatch anything like that. And I was like, that's Wes. Like that's the Wes that I know. To me, the Wes from Fred and Wes is a different character, like a completely different what. And the same thing happened to me when I saw Cordy and Angel flirt. I think they flirted like twice in the season or something. Like there was some scenes that I felt some like romantic chemistry in between them, and my mind went to, oh, that's so funny. Like, can you imagine if they were to like explore a romance in between them? And then my mind went to, oh, because I think that's something that they almost hinted to at some point of the show. Like it feels like completely distinct characters. I'm not gonna lie to you. Those are not the characters that I feel like I know, which is very interesting. I just feel like I had a completely different interpretation of them the first time that I watched, that right now I'm like re-meeting all of them in a completely different way. So I actually don't think that there are a lot of moments where I'm like, oh, this is the character that I know. I feel like I'm meeting them right now for the first time, which is really interesting and really mind-blowing at times because I really genuinely forget that these characters are the same ones that I have seen in the future, and that like, there's like so much missing in between that I can't seem to form a connection in between the old characters and the new ones, if that makes sense. And True Family Bromatonk, I do not know if I said that right, and I apologize. Bromontk. True Family Bromontk. Yeah, I think that would be it. Okay. Would you wish Doyle back instead of having Wesley as the recurring character? Even though we know Glenn did not stay and we know what happened to him, but still, I sometimes wonder what would happen if Doyle was still here. I thought that was a very interesting question because I thought it was a little bit dicey, and I was like, ooh, I wanna talk about this. I don't think I would have picked Doyle because I do think that, and maybe this is biased by the fact that I know Wes more, and so therefore I feel like I feel more inclined to like him. But I think I like Wes more, and I can't really imagine the show with Doyle taking over Wes's character. I think this is a moment where my vision of having seen parts of Angel makes it very hard for me to imagine Doyle not leaving, because that would mean Wes wouldn't come in. So I have to say that even though it was so painful to lose him, I feel like it was worth it to be able to have Wes come into the show in a way. So I don't think I would have changed that. As hard as it is, I don't think I would have. It's hard, but yes, I think I'm going to stick to that. Okay, so now we get to do a fun part. We get to talk about some season 2 predictions. I have quite a few. This is probably going to be funny because I feel like I'm probably going to get them a little bit wrong because that has been happening to me lately, but I still decided I'm going to do it anyways. So I hope you have fun laughing at me while I very confidently talk about what I think is going to happen. About season 2 as a whole, I think it's going to be more consistent. Just like how I was talking about how I feel like season 1 had that dip around the She episode where I was not into it as much. I think season 2 is going to be more overall consistent. I think there's going to be like less bad episodes. I think they're all going to be like really solid and a couple of like really incredible ones. So I think that's going to change a little. Because now I think they actually really understand the show. They understand what's appealing to the audiences and stuff like that in a way that like it's hard to when you're still in season 1 of any show. Um, in regards to Big Bad, I feel like that's the first sort of theories that I have to go into because I would have assumed that I would have learned my lesson in watching season 1 and I would understand that there is no such thing as a big bad and angel. They do things differently, right? Because it's about the prophecies and stuff like that. And Wolfram and Hart as like an institution. Except I'm gonna choose to like ignore that because I think Darla is the season 2 big bad. I think she's gonna be stirring some shit up. I do think Wolfram and Hart is still going to be like kind of like an initiative of the show because they're still gonna be there and they're like villains, but they're like an institution and not like specific people. And I don't think that Lindsay is going to be like a big bad. Maybe Lila, but Darla, oh, Darla's coming in strong, and I just know it. I think maybe because I feel like Wolfram and Hart must have a very specific reasoning for choosing Darla to come back. I feel like there's no way that that reasoning doesn't have to do with her relationship with Angel. I feel like if they picked her, it's because they know that there's something that they can use to manipulate the emotional, like the emotional side of Angel. So I think they're gonna use Darla to get into Angel, to cut through his like bad boy persona who pretends like he doesn't feel anything and to really get him to feel stuff. So I don't know if she's gonna be bringing back like Angelus memories and like what he did to his family, or I just feel like she's gonna be like a master manipulator this season. So a part of me thinks that maybe she's going to sort of like infiltrate Angel investigations, that she's going to come back and pretend like she's good now and do all that thing to sort of get close to them, only to betray them in the end. Because I feel like she's got to have an emotional connection to Angel for anything good to come out of it, like for Wolfram and Hart. She has to be able to manipulate Angel and those kind of things. So I think maybe she might pretend to be a good guy for a sec. So I think we're going to see her as a big bad in this capacity in helping Wolfram and Hart achieve whatever goal they want to by whatever means they find to be necessary. So I'm really, really excited to see how Darla is going to fit in and to see what kind of connections she's going to create. And if she's going to eventually like rebel against Wolfram and Hart, if she's going to be thankful forever and never want to like let go of them. I don't know. Is she going to agree with what they're doing? Is she going to be happy to do it? Is she going to have some resistance? What do they want to do? I don't know exactly what they want to do to Angel, but I guess my gut, because I have been thinking that they want to recruit him, and they almost said it at some point. Maybe Darla is just going to be a strategy of being able to get Angel into Wolfram and Hart, because they've tried to kill them. Like, when they tried to kill him, it didn't work. So I feel like the best thing that they can do, or that they're aware that they can do, is to actually enlist them and get him to be on their side. So I think Darla is going to try and help with bringing him into Wolfram and Hart, just like Riley was sort of bringing Buffy into the initiative in a way. Somebody else that I think might go bad this season is Kate. Because I feel like their last talk was so interesting to me, Angel and Kate's, where she was like pretty much saying that they're going to be enemies now. And I feel like I shouldn't be as interested in this as I am. But like, I have said this before, I feel like angst is my shit. And if they're enemies, that's going to make me ship them possibly even harder, because I'm going to be like, oh, there's something going on here. And maybe that means we're going to get to see Kate more. But I do think that was interesting, because I feel like Kate's really struggling with all these like sort of feelings that she's having, like, and understanding everything that's going on. And I could see her like losing her morals for a second, or not knowing what to believe, in a sense that she actually goes crazy for a sec and just goes against Angel, tries to harm him and stuff like that. Like, she could really be out to get him and be using the police to her advantage. And I'm just really curious to see what that's going to happen, because I feel like while I was so convinced in season 1 that they were going to have something romantic, I feel like right now she can really come into the show in a different capacity. I don't know if it's going to end up in romance by the end of the season, but I do think that, like, for the beginning of the season, she can definitely prove to be even more separate than Angel than we would have expected. So I'm really interested to see where that relationship is going to go, because it never goes where I want it to or where I expect it to. So I feel like there's got to be a lot that's going to happen. I do feel like it's a fair assumption in regards to like who's going to be joining in as new characters, right? Not new characters, but who's going to become series regulars, because I do think, I have said this, 3 people is too little. So I do think that they're going to be adding in Gunn, because they have to, because they just established him and he's definitely going to become an important part of the show. Like, it might take him a second, but I do think he's going to eventually join them. But I think we might still see him a little bit every episode, sort of like helping Angel until he eventually becomes a part of Angel Investigations. So I'd have to say Gunn. I would have to say Darla. I think we're going to see her a little bit, know what she's up to, but not exactly know their plan until a little bit further into the season, around like mid-season or something. Like, I think she might not make contact with Angel right away. I think it's going to take a little while. So I'd say Darla. I'd say Gunn. I would say Kate. And that's more wishful thinking than anything else, but I have been waiting for her to like become an important character in the show. And if not now, then when? And I guess maybe possibly Lindsay and Lila if they want to. But I feel like that would be way too many names in the intro. So we'll see. But I feel like as long as we're talking about Darla, we have to be talking about them too. So I guess if one of them makes it into the intro, the 3 of them would have to make it. So we'll see. They feel very connected. But I'm excited to have Gunn join in. Like I said, I think he might be a little bit like resistant to join the group itself. But I do think that maybe by the middle of the season, he's going to be fully immersed into it. And Darla, I think she might only make contact with them around the middle of the season too. I think they're going to be establishing some things in the beginning of the season so that in the middle of the season, a bunch of things can switch around and change the tone of the season. I also kind of want to see more about Faith, and I think maybe Faith might come back because she feels like such a big character, and I think that everything that they did in Sanctuary, the more I think about it, the more I feel like her story is not over. It can't be over, even though it really seems like it is, because like she's in jail and how can they get her out? I do feel like because season 5 of Buffy is so iconic, I sort of expect her to show up there at some point. I think she has to be a part of it, because if the season is so good, that automatically makes me feel like Faith has to be a part of it, because Faith is so good and she elevates the quality of her episodes, of any episode she's in. So I do think that maybe we might get to see a little bit of Faith in Angel, because maybe the beginning of the season, like maybe Wolfram and Hart gets Faith out of jail. Like they defend her or something like that, and she is out of jail and eventually goes into Buffy, but does a little bit of an Angel stunt before she goes there. Yeah. I'm not too confident about this prediction, but I think so many of my predictions are just wishful thinking of things that I want to happen. I want Faith back, so I'm going to write it into existence at this point. In regards to Angel, I think that we're going to have to talk about this whole idea that they just instituted in the end of the episode of Angel versus wanting to be a human. I think by the end of the season, he's going to have made up his mind. Like, I think he's going to give up on it. I think maybe throughout the season, he's going to understand that he can only live as a vampire, or should only live as a vampire. Like, maybe he's going to understand that he's doing more good than any harm that he could have done as Angelus. Like, I don't know. I feel like he's got to find out that either he doesn't want to be human or that he can't be human. But I feel like it would be more interesting if he were to find out that he doesn't want to be human, if that was an active choice that he was making instead of the universe making it for him. But we'll see. I do think this is going to be like an overarching theme of the season until we finally sort of come to a conclusion around the end of season 2. What else? I think we're gonna have to explore Lila and Lindsay's relationship, because I do think that Lindsay, we know he has a good heart, so I feel like Lila might be pushing him to do some things he's not gonna agree with. So I feel like while Lindsay might be going against, like Lila might be reinforcing the Wolfram and Hart ideals, and Lindsay might be trying to fight a little bit against it. Like, he doesn't want to fight against the norm. He doesn't want to actually go through and break up with Wolfram and Hart, but I think he might have some issues in not agreeing about everything that they want him to do. So maybe by the end of season 2, Lindsay might come around to our team and be like, I can't do this. But he's not going to be able to do it unless he gets support. So we'll see, but I definitely feel like Lindsay and Lila are going to fight. I feel like we're going to get to see more of their relationship, and I don't see it being all good. I see them not agreeing as to what they have to do. A very random note that I came up with, like, while I was discussing this episode, is that I thought it was so interesting that we saw the D&D guy in the finale, because his storyline felt so weird to me in the Gun episode, because it felt like the entire episode could have happened without that. And so when we saw him in the finale, it almost feels like they were reminding me that his character exists. And I'm like paying attention to that, because I feel like this means that he has to come back in season 2. The thing is, I have no idea at what capacity. I don't know what he can add other than like financially, or potentially being Cordy's boyfriend, even though she seems to have like discarded that option. So I don't know what exactly he is going to do in Angel, but I would have to say that D&D guy would come back. And if we hadn't seen Darla at the end of the episode, I would have guessed that D&D guy would be big bad material. But I don't think he is. But I don't exactly trust him, but he seems like a nice guy, but I don't know. D&D guy is weird, and I need more information about him to be able to make up my mind, because in some ways he seems innocent and just really nice, and in some ways I'm like, I don't know, are you too nice? Is there something wrong with that? I'm a little bit worried about him. And in general about Darla, an interesting note that I came up with when thinking about predictions is that I think Darla might stir some shit up with not Faith. I said I think Darla might stir some shit up with Kate, to quote myself. And I think that could be interesting. I wrote that maybe she could kidnap her or Cordy or something like that. I do feel like they could, because they feel like there's so little like female characters in the show. I don't know, I get that vibe, just because I guess out of the 3 main, 2 of them are men. I don't know. And because it's so focused on Angel, it just feels more male-centric. So I feel like they could be going down this route of like damsel in distress. So I feel like either Cordy or Kate could be kidnapped and they're going to have to save them or something. But I did think that maybe Darla could just make Kate drift even more apart from Angel. Like maybe she tells her the truth about what happened, and like, you know, maybe Kate does get closer to Angel again, but then after Darla tells her everything that Angelus did, Kate like backs away for good. I feel like Darla can really fuck things up in regards to Kate's relationship with Angel. And I don't even mean romantically, but just like any sort of relationship in between them. Because I feel like Darla's gotta come here for like emotional reasons of stirring shit up. And I'm worried, but I'm really curious to see what she could potentially do. And in general, I just feel like the most important thing of the season, or at least like an overarching thing that I'm really confident about, is that I feel like our trio is going to become even closer. I think we've been doing a good job at exploring Angel and Cordy's relationship, so I feel like now is going to be the moment where we're going to be exploring Angel and Wes, and Cordy and Wes, to really bring Wes in so that we can sort of have him at the same level, like so that they can just be a trio and like that's it, and we love them and we support them and stuff like that. So I am very excited to see how that friendship is going to go. I'm so excited to see Darla, where that storyline is going to go. I'm kind of just dying to start season 2 already. I think it's going to be really good. I think it's going to be really interesting. I have very high hopes, high expectations, a lot of probably bad theories. But yeah, I think those would have to be the things that I have to say about this season. Even though I feel like it was a fairly critical video, that's just because I'm analyzing things as a whole, but I do think that it was a solid season. No matter what I said, I really enjoyed most episodes, with the exception of like I think the episodes were great. The stories were really interesting, and it's just good to get to finally know this Angel format. I think I'm a lot more familiar with it. It is not what I would have expected. It just feels very different. It feels very fresh, and I've been really enjoying it, and I'm looking forward to see everything else that they're gonna do. So yes, I appreciate everybody who watched this, if you did. And I guess I will see you all in 501, which is coming in soon, and slowly, shortly followed by 201, I'm sure. And I'm very excited for it. So yeah, I'll see y'all then, and let's hope that we can fuck Wolfram and Hart on season 2, because I don't want them to succeed. But yeah, we'll see. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.